realized I was muted. Helps if I'm not muted. So I was in this whole passionate thing about telling you what was happening 2 years ago. Started this again. So 2 years ago, my wife and I had just overcome me being an idiot. In the course of, let's see, I got married in May 2022, and by March 2023, my wife was in jail because I was stupid. I had, in all sense of the word, made it look like I was cheating on her a ninth time. Because in the span of not even close to a year, I was caught cheating about 8 times. And she had all the reason in the world to leave, had all the reason in the world to kick me out. But God had different plans. So, in the course of tonight, I'm not going to be talking so much about what I did 2 years ago. I am going to be talking about how the individuals within the Bible had a particular way that they were doing that God was commanding them to do, but then they decided that they wanted to control the whole situation for their own narrative. Now, just to show you, all of this is already been planned out. Looks like, oh come on, screen here. Already got this wrote out. We already covered number one. We haven't gotten to number two or number three. Pretty sure we'll get to number two or number three. But to kind of recap, the original plan of the law was to educate the people on the parameters, the judgments of God, and also the consequence of not following those parameters. And the very first time that the Israelites heard the law being read to them, they stood up. They stood for 6 hours and listened to the law being spoken. And when the law had been spoken, they said amen. Now, a lot of people, they hear amen, they think it means, oh, that's the end of the prayer. But actually, in the Hebrew and the Greek, the word amen means I'm going to replicate that. Whatever has been spoken about, whatever's been prayed about, whatever's been portrayed as doing, amen, I want that to be replicated in my house. That's what amen means. So as a result, somebody prays something and I don't agree with it, I don't say amen. Because I'm not about to say a word that in the specific language it means I want to replicate it, and then I say the word not realizing what it means in the original language, and then by God's definition I'm held in contempt because I just lied. And as I was saying to Jay, this is about God's parameters, not ours. We can have opinions, but if it doesn't line up with God's parameters, it's just an opinion. And it's not something that He will authorize. So, the in the New Testament, the religious leaders would add heavy burdens of man-made traditions to God's law. They used religion to gain power, but not to serve the people. They manipulated the scripture to control them. And that's what they did up to the point that Jesus showed up. Now, here's a thing that not too many people realize. In between the time that the prophet Isaiah and the prophet Isaiah, Ezekiel, Hosea, and Malachi, they all talked about how there would be a savior coming to redeem all of Israel. But between the time of when the prophets spoke and the time that Jesus actually showed up was a span of about 400 years. And so the people did not know what to look for when Jesus actually showed up. So it was to the mind-numbing reality that when they didn't understand what God was or who God was or why Jesus was even showing up as God on earth, he was so clean. He was so outside of all the ways the people had decided that the Messiah would show up. He was so clean and pure, they believed he was evil and tried to kill him. If they couldn't kill him, they sure tried to control him. And when he showed that the origin of that control was that they were the sons of Satan, whew, the religious leaders definitely wanted to kill him. Because he had, in that statement, he had shown that as much as the religious leaders were saying, you have to follow us because we're the religious leaders, Jesus came along and said, you don't have to follow them. You can listen to what they say and apply it to your life, but don't follow their actions because they are whitewashed tombs, clean on the outside, dead on the inside. That is absolutely wild. So, back to the notes. Well, thanks for following through, Jay. Much appreciated. Where was I? Come on. Give me that. As a result of them rejecting Jesus and his authority, he pronounced judgment on them. And within 60 years of Jesus pronouncing that judgment, the entire city of Jerusalem was destroyed. There was not one block on top of another. Now we think about all the different ways that we think God should be merciful. But consider this. He gave them a vision of the future of what it would look like for the Messiah to show up. And then it was quiet for 400 years. And in the span of that 400 years, they made up all these different theologies of what he would look like. And when he did show up, they killed him. What should God's... If you had just one child, and this one child is sent into, let's see, the Iraq, the Ukraine war, you're like really, really, really rich, and you're sending your son into the Ukraine war so that you can have a representative of your wealth, and you want the Ukrainians to follow your specific design. because of the wisdom and the richness that you're sending through your son, and they kill him. How are you going to react? You just going to forgive him? Just be like, all right, fine, whatever. No. God had a reaction. God's reaction was swift. All right. So, from here, we are going to 1 Samuel chapter 13. And going to find out all the various ways that King Saul, even though he is anointed as king, he decides to do things his own way. All right? But before we get to all of that, baby, you're so nice. Bit noisy, but nice. So, in the background, somebody set off some music. And I forgot to mute my own mic. So I said something to her, and to my embarrassment, I come back. Jay's like, "Are you talking to me specifically?" Woo! Oops. So sorry about that. Um. So the scripture is 1 Samuel 10, I believe. Oh yeah, I'm not using that one. I'm using Amplified. Is it 1 Samuel 10? Videos. No, over here. There we go. No, 13. Also, in the background, there is one very zealous lady who is convinced that if she says things a particular way, everybody else is going to cave and do as she says. So, if you find you hear some noise in the background, that's what's going on. Do 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 do. So, Saul was 30 years old when he became king. Oops, wrong translation, or not the right not the translation I'm using for the presentation. He was 30 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 42 years. He had 3,000 men of Israel. 2,000 were with him in Mishmash, while 1,000 were with Jonathan at Gibeah. He did all those particular things. The Philistines gathered 30,000 chariots, 6,000 horsemen, troops in multitude like sand on the seashore. They had all this stuff going on. And Saul, he stayed in Gilgal because he is trembling in fear. Saul waited 7 days according to the appointed time which Samuel had set, but Samuel had not come to go Gilgal, and the people were scattering away from Saul. So Saul said, "Bring me the burnt offering and the peace offerings." And he offered the burnt offering which he was forbidden to do. As soon as he finished the offering, the burnt offering, Samuel finally came. Samuel went out to meet him and welcome him. Samuel said, "What have you done?" Saul said, "Since I saw the people were scattering from me, and you did not come at the appointed time, and that the Philistines were assembling at Mishmash, therefore the Philistines will come down against me at Gilgal, and I have not asked for the Lord's favor by making supplication, so I forced myself to offer burnt offering." Samuel said to God, by the way, Samuel was a prophet of God, "You have acted foolishly. You have not kept the commandment of the Lord your God, which he commanded you. For if you had obeyed, the Lord would have established your kingdom over Israel forever." Here's a guy who was full on convinced that in order for him to have a sway on the people, he'd just go ahead and do whatever he wanted to do. When the prophet showed up, "Hey, why'd you have a burnt offering?" "Well, the people they was running away, and I wanted to show them I'm still in control." Yeah. When the prophet didn't show up, Saul was just like, "Okay, I will do things on my own. I will control what's going on." I don't know whether he knew it right then and there, but when he did that, he was bitter against God. The moment that he tried to control what was going on, he was bitter against God. I don't know whether he knew it. But Samuel says, if you would have waited for me, for the blessing, the Lord would have established your kingdom over Israel forever. As in, all of Israel would say, Saul is our forever king. As of right now, Jesus is known as the son of David, not the son of Saul. Lord has sought out for himself a man, which is David, after his own heart, and the Lord has appointed him as leader and ruler over his people, because you have not kept or obeyed what the Lord commanded you. Then Saul got up, decided, I'm going to do whatever I need to do to get my weaponry. Do, 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 do. Trying to find the specific section. So Saul and Jonathan warring with the Philistines. And because Jonathan had God's favor, they were able to win. The Lord saved Israel that day, and the battle spread beyond Bethaven. But the men of Israel were hard pressed that day, because Saul had put the people under a curse. He's the king of Israel. He has the authority of God, because he's the king of Israel. But he said, Cursed be the man who eats food before evening, before I have taken vengeance on my enemies. So none of the people ate any food. All of the people of the land came to a forest. There was honey on the ground. When the people entered the forest, the honey was dripping, but no man put his hand to his mouth to taste it, because the people feared the oath of Saul. But Jonathan, own flesh and blood, had not heard it when his father put the people under the oath, put out the end of his staff that was in his hand, dipped it in the honeycomb, and put his hand to his mouth, and his energy was restored. When he found out what the curse was, he says, My father has troubled the land with his foolish curse. See how my energy is restored, because I tasted a little of this honey. How much better it would have been if the people would have eaten freely today from the spoil of their enemies which they found. For now the slaughter among the Philistines has not been great. People were tired, they were hungry, and they killed a whole bunch of sheep, oxen, and calves and ate them without cooking them, without no barbecue. Here's a bit of an issue. The people are hungry. They are so hungry, they're eating the meat with the blood still in it. And this blowhard has the gall to tell them that they sinned, but he's not providing for his people. Like, what? There he goes, building another altar. It's the first altar he had built to the Lord. He says, Come here, all you leaders of the people. Let us find out how this sin is causing God's silence. How this sin causing God's silence happened today. For as the Lord lives, who saves Israel, for if even the guilt is in my son Jonathan, he shall most certainly die, but not one of all the people answered him. He is so convinced, I'm going to control the narrative. Not only is God silent because the people ate meat with blood, I'm going to kill whoever caused the curse to fall on the people, even though it's my own son. None of them are to blame for this. It's the king. The king is responsible for the silence, yet he wants to put the blame on everybody else. This is someone who is bitter against God. The person who wants to blame everybody else for what's going on is someone who is bitter against God. And this is what it looks like. Now, I know you're kind of late to the party, so to speak, Jay, but I have been teaching about the various things of bitterness ever since God showed me all the way back in March of 2023 12 ways I was bitter against my wife and didn't even know it. So as a result, it has me so excited to share with people how they don't have to be bitter towards God. Okay? Bear with me one moment. So this is 14. I'm just going to scroll here through here real quick. He's disobedient again, Samuel 15, or 1 Samuel chapter 15. And this, by the way, is one of the most amazing chapters because that a lot of people don't really think about. Word of the Lord came to Samuel saying, I regret that I made Saul king, for he has turned away from following me, has not carried out my commands. He asked Saul, what the heck's going on? Saul's like, I'm making another altar for the Lord. Samuel's like, stop. Let me tell you what the Lord said to me last night. Saul said, okay, let me hear it. Samuel says, is it not true that even though you were insignificant in your own eyes, you were made head of the tribes of Israel, and the Lord anointed you king over Israel? The Lord sent you on a mission, said to go totally destroy. By the way, let me just set stage here. You by now have heard about the war between Israel and Gaza and Iraq, or excuse me, and Iran. You by no doubt have heard about this. These, the reason that Gaza exists as a people against Israel is because of this guy right here. The reason that Iran exists as a people that want to destroy Israel is because of this guy right here. He wanted to control how things went. He was told to destroy all of the Amalekites and wouldn't. Now, because of Saul, there's people like the Palestinians and the people of Iran trying to kill him. They are direct descendants of these Amalekites. God trying to give Israel a future peace that would last for generations and generations. He has this man Saul appointed to king, the man Saul doesn't do as God commands, and as a result, the Israelites are in danger of being wiped out by the Amalekites generation after generation. He says, go and destroy the sinners, the Amalekites, fight against them until they are eliminated. Why did you not obey the voice of the Lord, but instead swoop down to plunder with shouts of victory and did evil in the sight of the Lord? Saul starts to defend all the reasons why he can't do what he was commanded to do. Samuel says, has the Lord a great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices, as in obedience to the voice of the Lord? Behold, it is better to obey than to sacrifice needlessly, and to listen better than the fat of rams. For rebellion is as serious as the sin of divination, which is fortune telling, or in some translations, witchcraft. Disobedience is as serious as false religion and idolatry. Now, Jay and I were having a little conversation a little earlier about the purposes of God's parameters. Here's a guy who didn't care, was going to do his own thing. And Samuel says, because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has also rejected you as king. And then he's like, oh, I have sinned, for I did not do the command of the Lord in your words because I feared the people. He's a crybaby. He didn't own up to what he was supposed to do. He didn't say, you know what, I didn't do this stuff because I was just scared. But no, he had to make sure that he cursed all the people who cursed is all the person who eats before the battle is done, and then he didn't kill all the people that he was supposed to kill. Just absolutely wild. Just absolutely wild. '16. This is when Samuel anoints David. '17. Goliath. David and Goliath. I'm sure you've heard that story. David takes out Goliath. 18. Jonathan and David have this amazing connection. Saul turns against David, wants to kill him. David marries Saul's daughter, trying to make some peace in the family. David protects the very guy who's trying to kill him. Is wild. Absolutely wild. In this whole thing, why was this whole thing happening? Jay, I told you I was going on live stream. I'm not preaching to you. I'm preaching to the live stream. You're in the live stream. That's all. That's all. I would say this whether you were here or not. But I'm not talking to you. Then we have chapter 20. David and Jonathan have a covenant. Saul angry with Jonathan. I mean, the level of this guy's complete and total refusal to walk in God's ways because he wanted to control the narrative. It's just wild. It completely defeats the purpose of being the king of God, king of Israel, if you're not going to represent God. This is just the wildest thing to me. But probably the part that is the wildest to me of the whole thing is that when the prophet dies, all of a sudden Samuel does not have someone to rely on. And so he goes to a witch to ask what to do. Here's why it's so interesting. The last time he had a heart-to-heart with Samuel, Samuel told him that rebellion was the same as witchcraft. And yet, when the prophet died, and and uh, Saul is looking for a way to hear from the prophet, he goes to a witch to find out what to do, and the prophet shows up. Like, what? The prophet of God showed up, and Saul knew it. The moment that the witch that was bringing this dead spirit to life saw that it was actually the body of Samuel, she freaked out. Because according to the law of what the prophet had established, she should have been dead. So when the prophet Samuel came up as the dead spirit and began to speak, and the witch knew who he was, that's when she figured out who her customer was. You know you are at a level of stupidity when you start doing things your own way. Start to go to a fortune teller to try to get a message on how to do things God's way. And the very prophet that told you, listen, if you chase rebellion, you're chasing witchcraft. And then he shows up by the hand of a witch. Well, it's a great question, Jay. Let me see if this works. Let me know if that works for you. That, I think, should give you a link to come into the studio. Why is this giving me 2, but it's not updating? That's wild. Alright, I will check, see if that'll work for you. And then we can have a conversation. Because yes, I did invite you, and then I'm just going on with my lesson. I agree, that's rude. So, By the way, if you are coming in, you will be recorded on the YouTube. That's kind of, you'll be on YouTube and you'll be on Instagram. It's both. Give me, copy that, and need to install the app. That's wild. I didn't know that was... Oh, because you're coming in on mobile. That's why. Yeah, if you had the desktop version. What happens if you, in the browser, tap on the three dots, like the hamburger menu or whatever? Oh, hey,
All right, so is this thing on?
it is on. I don't know if you can hear a screaming kid in the background, but
All right, well, I turned off the YouTube, so hopefully there's not a crazy delay, but I can hear myself talk, and that's going to make things interesting.
all right, give me one moment. I will turn down volume on my side. Try it again.
All right.
Nope, that's
Well,
not
I can
it.
still hear myself,
I'm
but
still...
don't worry, I'll deal with it. So, do you? I'll wait till you're ready.
There it is. Go ahead. Oh my goodness. That's an amazing back and forth. Now I'm
Say
waiting.
what? You
I said
broke up.
your picture was the most back and forth. I wasn't quite sure what the heck was going on, but it seems to have stabilized.
Well, now you're all choppy.
Oh, fine. Maybe it's just that part of the room, or just that part of the house that you're in.
I hope so. Is this good now?
All right. So you were saying, and you froze. Oh, come on here. There we go. Ish. There we go.
Man, I can't tell if this is working or not.
I think your connection is... let me see here.
Well, let's try and do voice only. Let's see if that helps things.
That might help things, yes. I mean, I still
All
know...
right.
I can still hear you, so that'll work.
Yeah, that'll work. All right. So, do you want to? I would like to restart the conversation because I really feel that there was some more miscommunication on the first topic we were talking about. But I'm also happy to go on to my next point.
If you could go back to the room you were in when you first were on YouTube, because it's glitching like the old metallic sound audio. Know what I mean?
I got you.
It's like...
I'm just trying to respect my family as well because
Oh,
they don't want to deal with me.
well, for what it's worth, I am in a very small apartment. It's a one bedroom, and it's literally... right over there is my wife, and I gotta be careful that I'm not too loud for her ears too. All right, now, you said there was a part that I had kind of skipped over. You wanted to clarify? Did we freeze up again?
Say what?
I said you said there was a part that you wanted me to clarify on.
Oh no, like just in general, I felt that the conversation there was a miscommunication somewhere. Um, but I'm also perfectly happy moving to the next topic.
Okay, let's go to the next one.
All right. So bear with me because I don't have these perfectly memorized. I have better things to use my brain for, but I believe it's Deuteronomy 20:13 through 30, I think. Are you familiar? I believe that's where we were going next.
Was that the one about the fine?
Yes, it states that if a man decides that he has an issue with his wife and he thinks that she wasn't a virgin, he is to take the issue to the city guards, upon which either the bride and the bride's family will present the evidence, in which case, if the man was lying, he'll be fined. But if the woman was lying, meaning there's no blood on the sheet, then she is to be stoned to death by the men in the city. So the first question is, does that sound like justice?
Do you know whether all the people that were in the Israelites were just Israelites
All
in
right,
the
so
in the story
so
of
so
Deuteronomy?
so my question was a yes or a no question. That doesn't sound like a yes or a no.
Because it isn't.
And so the issue is it fine to kill a woman for a crime that a man is only fined for? That was the exact question we're dealing with right now.
All right. Well, in the context, because your specific argument is about context, not
The
the fine.
context should matter. Hold on. The context should matter because God is unchanging. He is the same today, tomorrow, or today, yesterday, and tomorrow. His law then is his law now.
Okay. So his law was for the Israelites to purify them
All right.
because they
So
weren't
so
pure in Deuteronomy.
that so how does that make it fair for a man to be fined but a woman killed for the same crime?
Because even while God's way is the same yesterday, today, tomorrow, the people aren't.
So it is okay for the man to be killed, the man to be fined, but it's okay for the woman to be killed for the same crime.
In the day of the Deuteronomy, the women didn't have status.
Oh, I'm very aware. Does that make it correct?
That makes it context.
No, 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 no. This is
It,
talking. We're talking.
if
I'm
you
not worried
don't
about.
if you don't like context, you don't like the Bible.
All right. So then, by today. All right. Well, then why is it not done today? Why are we so? And then again, why is the woman's virginity so important? It's worth killing her over, but a man lying about it is only worth being fined.
Are you
How is that
familiar?
just? How is that just?
Yes. Are you familiar with Genesis 6?
Not off the top of my head.
So Genesis 6 is before the flood, and the fallen sons of God, which are uh, the angels cast out of heaven,
You're going to
they
talk about the Nephilim, and I don't believe in the supernatural. There's zero evidence of the supernatural, which includes some race of angels that bred with men in the past. No evidence of this.
well, okay.
And how does that make it fair for a man to lie about a sentence that would kill a woman? He only gets fined. How is
Again,
that fair? How is that
you're
just?
talking context, not fair.
It doesn't. No. If it was unfair then, if it was fair then, it would be fair now.
Because the women did not have purified wombs.
All right. Well, all right. So I'm not. Until the supernatural is shown to have actually existed, there is no reason to expect anything supernatural.
So
Two,
if
you've
these
already made it. Hold on. You've already made it clear we're not going to agree here. You
yeah,
claim a whole bunch of supernatural things, whereas I simply state that it is simple. A punishment depending on a person's gender is unjust in principle. We agree?
no.
What did I make incorrect about your statement? or you're a physician?
The the punishment based on gender was not based on gender. It was based on status.
No, it was based on gender. The status comes from their gender.
Mm.
If they,
Because the male slaves had less standing in the people of Israel than the women did.
well, that, and
So it's not about gender. It's about status.
yes, we all know the Bronze Age people didn't give a shit about human rights. That doesn't change things. It's based on gender.
It's based on status.
It doesn't mention slave status. It does not mention wealth status. It only mentions a man and a woman. That is God's words.
Yes.
You are adding. You are adding to God's word.
No, sir.
That's what you're doing
I'm
right now.
adding context. You don't like
And
the
I am
word context.
I'm not worried about the context. I'm not quoting
you are
the
worried
law.
about the context. If you were not worried about the context, you would not have any issue with the status.
All right. Well, as I said, we're clearly going to disagree on this point. So now would you like the next point?
Let me answer your question. Because the actual reason that there's a fine on the man and a killing of the
is because women were considered property back then. So if a woman wasn't a virgin, then he received damaged goods, which is complete and utter bullshit. And I can't believe a God would allow his creations to be spoken of in such a way. But it's because they were considered property, not full people. I'm very aware.
It isn't because of that. It's because of Genesis 6.
Yes. Okay. Well, anyways, moving on.
In the time of Genesis, no, sir. You gotta let me
say your piece so we can move on.
You gotta let me answer.
You're going to say because of the Nephilim and magical wombs and impurity.
No, sir. No,
we
sir.
just went over it. Then what else are you going to quote from Genesis 6?
I'm not talking about the Nephilim.
All right. Well, hurry up.
I'm talking about what the Nephilim did to the women.
Yes, yes.
Caused the women to have sex with animals and to cause crossbreed between human and animal.
And what does any of that have to do with a woman being a virgin on her wedding night?
As a result, the people who continued that practice came into Egypt with the Israelites. And so when the Israelites were put out of Egypt because of all of the plagues, all of those tainted
more events that are unsubstantiated by history, but continue.
The Israelites. So to purify the Israelites, God had some very specific, very detailed laws about making sure that the tainted people that came along with the Israelites were weeded out.
I fail to see how that has any relevance to a woman being a virgin or not on her wedding night. But fair enough. Anyways, the next point being an interesting fact that I know Bronze Age people weren't clearly aware of, and I think it seems like God himself was not aware of. But we do now know that something like 40-ish% of women bleed the first time they have intercourse. The rest don't. Now, to be fair, I don't have a citation handy, but I promise I can find one if you want to push for it. But in good faith, let's take it that that's true. We do know that to be the case. So that means that some of those women, when they were brought up as being guilty of that crime, were in fact definitely not guilty. And they were punished to death under a law devised by an all-knowing God, who surely would have known that. And yet, he has zero problem condemning those innocent women to death, apparently, allegedly. Makes perfect. Yes, the context is they're Bronze Age men. They didn't know what the fuck they were talking about when they wrote their religious text. They simply wanted to continue the status quo of their women being the property that they were. That's the context. An all-knowing God would know that that's not an indication of virginity. And probably wouldn't have obsessed over virginity in the first place, since it seems to be only matters when it's a woman, which is curious. Which, again, you're probably going to quote the thing you said earlier. I'll shut up now. My apologies.
what was your next scripture?
No, 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 no. You're just going to skip over the fact that God knowingly sentenced innocent women to death and was cool with it. You're just going to gloss over that?
Yeah.
All right. All right.
You want to gloss over the supernatural.
I have every reason to gloss over the supernatural. There is zero evidence to show us anything that actually exists. If there was, then we could discuss it.
Let me ask you, Jay.
Go for it.
Have when the guide stones is a completely different topic.
So it seems like
When the guide stones in Georgia were destroyed, what did you think was the reason, or the course, or the cause?
I am not a conspiratorial minded person now that I'm out of my 20s. So I would assume vandals.
Okay.
That seems to be a very plausible reason.
Okay.
I've lived
So
in Georgia. There's a lot of stupid people there.
I haven't yet lived in Georgia, but I
Don't.
started.
Unless you like sweating, don't.
I started out in Ohio. I currently live in North Carolina.
Oh, well, never mind. You're familiar with sweating, it sounds like.
Yes, very. But the specifics, I heard quite a number of people saying there was a really strange timing between the CERN spinning up in Switzerland, and within 12 hours, those guide stones get destroyed.
So
Is
funny
is that
enough,
just coincidence?
I have an uncle. If you get him drunk enough, he will tell you about the time that he met President Nixon. Do you think he ever met President Nixon?
I can't say.
All right. Off of a story, no, you can't. But let's say I had a photo of
Mhm.
him with President Nixon, or what if I say we had a signed memento that he could have presumably have gotten in person from President Nixon? That lends some credence to the story, right? Still pretty kind of wild,
Be
but
wild.
clearly it happened.
I mean, there's there's so
Do you see
many.
now? Do you see
There's
the difference between your tall tale and a tall tale that has evidence?
See, here's the difference between the tall tales. You're presenting something that you know your uncle has said multiple times. Get him drunk enough,
Don't
and
go do that.
this is something that you know, um, because you have had a close enough connection with your uncle to know the difference of who he is on alcohol and who he is without the alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that the alcohol has a level of influence on him?
See, the problem is I think you're going off of as if, because I presented two scenarios. I presented just the drunk uncle by himself,
Hmm.
and in the same story, same drunk uncle, but let's say he had evidence of it. So it doesn't matter how drunk he was when he tells this story if he has evidence that it happened. The fact that a drunk can't remember saying things or doesn't remember the same things when an inebriated and uninebriated state doesn't change the fact that he clearly has a picture of him and Nixon together. It sounds like a tall tale when you hear it, but clearly it's happened. I have no
Yeah. Would you
problem.
say?
I have no problem accepting your tale about the timing between CERN, quote unquote, spinning up and this explosion happening. I have zero problem accepting that that would be true, as long as there was actually some evidence. That is the difference.
Got it. Got it. But my question: would you consider the alcohol as an influence?
As I've already explained, him being drunk doesn't make that photo appear. The
Aside
evidence,
from
the
that,
evidence,
aside
the
from that,
evidence, the evidence stands on its own, separate from the claim about the evidence.
okay.
You pointing out some saw an article that claimed CERN was doing experiments at that time. Uh, I don't think people take photographs of particle accelerators, but like if say a photograph of it doing the thing that you claimed it was doing, that would stand to show that the story that you are telling has at least some sort of basis in reality. That's far more likely than an empty claim that sounds outlandish because that's not what CERN is used for.
Okay. Um, would you say that your uncle's stories are an influence on you?
Of course. But again, that doesn't change the trueness of them if he has evidence that it happened.
So you are, if I'm understanding you correctly, and I may be a little dense sometimes,
That's fine. I'm a little
you're
baked.
saying
We're good.
you're saying that you would have had a relationship with him for his stories to make sense,
No,
right?
no, no, no. I'm saying, in the light of knowing that my drunk uncle says crazy shit because that's what drunks do, we know that that story is actually true because he has evidence of it. That has nothing to do with him being drunk or not. The photo will always exist because it's of an event that allegedly happened. Yes, photos can be faked, all that, but that is at least evidence that indicates its trueness. Whereas the same story without that picture is easily just my drunk fucking uncle. It
So
could be true. It could just be a claim. There's zero proof either way.
in the let's say he's just some random guy, and your friend is telling you about his uncle. Does it
It would
still
be the
hold?
same situation with lacking corroborating evidence. It's just a crazy tale. People tell them all the time. I've worked with guys. You ever have that guy you work with, the one who's always got a story that much better than yours, no matter what the story? He's an expert in it. He's done it professionally.
Yeah.
Everybody has claims, but is there evidence that shows your claims are true? That guy that does everything really good, when he tells me he's an expert roller skater and I've seen him roller skate, and that's not what experts do, that's evidence that what he's saying is not true. It could still be true in some offhanded situation, but generally the evidence will give you an amount of certainty towards the trueness of someone's claim. Everybody can make claims. Religions make claims. Science makes claims. Science provides evidence. Religion says, trust me, dude. I got this. It was God. And I'm not knocking it. I really don't care about people having religious beliefs. Like a lot of, I'm going to soapbox if you will allow it. I will.
You can soapbox so long as you let me soapbox then.
You got it. Fair trade. So a lot of people will allege that, I guess, us atheists don't know what we're talking about. And I was a born again believing Christian for 20 years.
Okay.
Everybody can say, again, it's just claims, but generally I know what I'm talking about. I enjoyed church when I was there. I don't have bad memories of church. I don't have bad memories of the church people that I personally interacted with. I, I guess I'm kind of sad I'm having this kind of conversation with you before him, but like he's still somebody I would respect enough to have these theological talks about.
Okay.
Because while I make the claim that God doesn't exist, and I have grand reasons to think so,
Hmm.
the fact of the matter is that I like knowledge. If a God does exist, I want to know,
Hmm.
and I will continue to ask because people claim they have evidence all the time.
Hmm.
And the fact of the matter is it's terrible evidence,
Okay.
and it's hard for people to seem to accept that coming from atheists when we say, "Oh, that's not really evidence." Well, this thing that I thought surely is evidence. It's why I believe, and I tell you that that's not from another person's perspective.
Hmm.
It simply doesn't carry any weight. It's not. It has nothing to do with whether we're honestly seeking or not. The fact that the evidence isn't there and it's not sufficient, and the fact that like we spend time, because I spend time doing this. Like clearly, it's a search for knowledge. The fact that I haven't found it yet doesn't mean it couldn't be there. But until I know it's there, there's zero reason to think it's there. There's zero reason to act as if it's there. Because as it stands now, you and your religious claims carry the same weight as a Muslim and a Hindu. You both claim that God, you know God through religious texts that you both say were written by men. You all three have religious experiences relevant to your religion, specific to your religion, with the same amount of evidence that it happens. I say it's true, and that's all you got. And it's there's so many more reasons than that, but that alone is surely indication that something's going on there. And religious beliefs are great for people to have. I don't care if people believe in God or not. But what's annoying is that when people take that religious belief and think that it overrides reality, which happens a lot nowadays. This is the whole reason we have an issue with vaccines, or a large portion of it. There are people still pushing to have creationism taught in school and that evolution is incorrect, and we know that's not the case. And they only do this on the grounds that they think this book is definitely true. And where I happen to live, it's one specific religion, but
Bible
there's
Belt.
fundamentalists, thankfully no,
Oh, whoop.
just America in general. Um, but it's that's what I have a problem with. And people infringing on other people's rights simply because of their religious beliefs, which is again is a huge modern issue. That's the only place where I find religious beliefs to be a problem. Because anything outside of that, people tend to choose the things that they like about a religion and that they stick to. It may not be exactly what the book says, but it works for them, and that's fine because that's what matters. And it's improving reality for everyone while we're here. It's harm reduction. And I don't know. That's what I got. I'm kind of baked by now, so I'm kind of rambling. I'm happy to stop here. I will definitely listen.
All right. I'm thankful that you showed up because I didn't know whether you would. And, you know, I may be one of the few people that has a Christian YouTube channel that has guests on, and I don't flinch at cuss words because I know the cuss word is not the person.
I mean, generally speaking, that's true. I guarantee you, there's a limit. I'm not going to find it because I'm not an asshole, but I bet you there's a limit.
So, I was raised in a Christian home, but I by far was not practicing it. Um, from the age of 7 to 14, I don't know if you can hear the background noise. Let me know if you can.
No, you're
Um,
good.
okay. Oh, well, the noise canceling is actually working. Um, I was practicing witchcraft in a Christian home, and I did it from the age of 7 to 14. I was in it because I could see that the way that my parents taught me about the Bible and the way that they lived it, that they was full of lies. They were so full of lies. I was so pissed off at them on the daily because of how many lies. They would read me a Bible story with a Bible value, and then somewhere between reading it and applying it, it never landed. And so whenever I would try to speak up about their inconsistency, my parents believed in corporal punishment. My butt got beat.
I'm familiar with that.
So my in- incessant curiosity about how they could not carry out what they read. Like, how could you possibly read all this amazing good stuff? You can't live it. So what I decided to do is I would go through the Bible, and I thought maybe the issue is that the English Bible that they're reading is not the same as the Hebrew that they say it came from. So I used a lexicon called the James Strong Concordance. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
I'm familiar.
Okay. So I went through. To my shock, I discovered this was while I'm in the middle of witchcraft, doing everything against what my parents are telling me to do. I discovered, much to my shock, that the Hebrew and Chaldean and Greek said the same thing as what the English said.
So I'm kind of annoyed because I know that's false, but I'm not going to say and push anything because I have zero evidence to back that claim up. But I feel in my heart of hearts that I know that's false.
I would challenge you.
Languages don't translate like that.
I would challenge you to read a commentary. In fact, I have a excellent commentary for you to read. It's called Ramban's. It's a Jewish commentary
Mm-hmm.
where this guy goes in and he takes the old Hebrew that's no longer written, and he gives a commentary of what was being written in that time. But anyways, I'm in the middle of this way of life, and I get to the age of 13 and my mom finally realizes that the reason I keep acting up and keep doing exactly opposite what she and dad are telling me to do is because of a supernatural reason that she can't even figure out what's going on. And so she prays. She prays this very strange prayer. She prays, God, don't let my son sleep until he makes his heart right with God. And 55 hours without sleep, in conjunction to her praying this prayer, and me not knowing what she prayed until afterwards. And so I say, God, I don't care what it takes. I give my life to you, and I was able to sleep. But
So
I then
so
went from, give me a moment. I then
okay,
went
yeah,
from the age of 14 to 34,
yeah.
more or less doing whatever I wanted. And in the course of 14 to 34, 20 years, I became so acquainted with bullshit Christians. How they would tell me what's in the Bible and couldn't live it. And that would piss me off the most. I would get into a debate, much like you're doing right now, about how they could not live what they taught. And
Mm-hmm.
I
No argument.
and I ran and I did all of that, and I ran smack dab into a guy named Donnie Smelser. And he said a thing that stopped me in my tracks and made me rethink my entire life. He said, Norm, what if the reason that you couldn't, that the people around you couldn't live the way that they spoke was that you were such a hard-ass turd that they could not. It made it seem, by the way that you were doing life, it made it seem like you were the worst case scenario of what it meant to be godly, and they couldn't. And I'm like, well, then they should have never tried. And he says, what if they weren't actually trying? How do you know they were actually trying to be godly? And I said, you know what? I don't know. He says, you know what you don't know? And I said, come on, genius. What's going on? He says, because to you it's a religion. To them, it's a relationship. And the way that you've practiced your friendship with them is a religion. You never wanted to know them. You just wanted to debate with them. And
So
that's a religion friendship. That's not an actual relationship friendship.
that I mean, I I hate that it sounds so condescending because that was legitimately some good apologetics. Um, but it's very unfortunate because it sounds like you experienced legitimate medical trauma. Like
Did.
people blaming you for their inability to take responsibility for their actions. As a parent, I know that that's bullshit. My
I
child, hold on. I have a child who is very difficult to parent.
mm,
I love him very much. He's a great child. He's very stubborn and he likes his way. And it doesn't matter what he does. He can act out whatever way he chooses to. But I am the adult, and my actions and my reaction to his actions are my responsibility. Nobody else's. No parent should hold their child responsible for their behavior like that because they are a child and they are an adult. They are in that position of authority. So it's absolutely terrifying to hear that people are using those kinds of excuses to try and tell people to act a certain way because that's abuse, flat out. Um,
so I
people
experienced, yeah, I
go for it.
experienced that level of abuse from the age of 2 until 31, and it broke my brain.
Right, but I'm saying like that's not proof of anything being real though. That is abuse. That is not the thing that you think it is. It is not the overarching anti-hero becomes superhero comic book arc you're thinking it of. It is simply abuse by people abusing you with the beliefs of the supernatural and not being able to take responsibility for their own actions.
Right. Well, the story isn't quite finished.
All right,
10
well, go on.
years later, age 41, I'm now, at this point, I'm married for a year and a half, and my wife comes to me and she says, Norm, you've been talking about forgiveness, how you got to forgive everybody in your past and all this forgiveness, but you still got a chasm between you and your dad. What would be the harm in forgiving him? And I blew up. I said, he's the one with all the faults. He's the one that did, and I had a list of things. She says, yes, this is true, but try it. And because I have a relationship with my wife, and because the way that she'd presented it, kind of like, pulled this little tiny part of my heart, like, what if? And so I sent him a text message in February of 2023. Told him that I forgave him for, or sorry, not 23, it was 24. I forgave him for everything. Apologized for being rude and insensitive and not honoring him. And he answered with, thank you. You don't know how long I've been praying for this. And at first, I just wrote him off like, sure, he's just saying that because he's had this happy moment and everything's going good for him now. So now he's on a really great note. But no, that August last year, go for a visit. And my dad and I talked as if we were peers the same age. Before that, he treated me like the 12-year-old that never grew up, and I treated him like the 40-year-old that never learned any lessons. But I forgave him when he had all the faults against me. He was the one that did the most things against me, and I forgave him.
That's how forgiveness works. Yeah.
And what was so wild is that my mom and my wife saw him talking to me like that, and they'd never ever seen that done before. Never ever had my father ever talked to me as a peer. And I find out later that his mind which had been stuck on only seeing things a particular way. The week or the day that I forgave him, it was like his mind grew mentally, and he was suddenly able to see other people's perspective and other people's point of view. Now, I'm not saying that's supernatural, but for me to go through 40, give it 40 years of scars, and I forgive him for everything he's done against me, and within half a year, he's talking to me like I'm a peer. I don't know, and to this day, I have such a amazing relationship with my dad where neither one of us are talking about the past of how things used to be. It's only about the present and the future. And the difference between the way that you describe church and the way that I describe church is that when I'm going to the church, I'm having an open relationship with God.
And and again, like certainly everything you've expressed so far, I have zero problem with. It's not, I mean, you're stating your point of view, it's perfectly fine, but none of that was telling me that my actions are going to lead me to a certain death or that that I must be a certain way.
I don't.
Like,
I
none of
don't
that,
know
like,
that.
certainly. And see, like, that's the kind of, like, none of that bothers me. I can have this discussion, we can disagree, and then it's literally fine. You don't seem to be the kind of person that I don't think that you're going to try and like learn real Earth history, but like you're not denying any of the stuff that actually matters in day to day life.
Here's why. I had an experience where I was taken to heaven at the age of 34, and I saw a room of books, and I was told by Jesus that every thought that I consider that he didn't give me is written into a book. Every word I say that he wouldn't say is written into a book. Every action that he wouldn't do. Every way I remember a person that he doesn't. Every way that a supernatural demonic spirit influences me in a way that Jesus wouldn't. All of those things are written into a book. And then the part that absolutely stopped me from having these pointless arguments about where a person's going to go when they die if they don't believe in Jesus. He says, Norm, not all of your friends are my friends, and not all of your enemies are my enemies. And so, since I don't know who God's friends are, and I don't know who God's enemies are, I can't say 100% where a person's going to go when they die.
I mean, pretty fair reasoning. I definitely disagree, but like I said, you're not one of those. It's you're out. Your mindset seems to be reasonable. I don't know how else to put it. It's certainly a compliment, I assure you.
Thank you.
Um,
And
but like
I
it,
and I
and
hate that Threads limits us to this tiny.
yeah, yes, yes, it annoys me. Um, I really don't have that much else to talk about. The other topics I don't know quite as well, so I can't have quite as a smooth a conversation. Um, but I would certainly love to have a conversation again in the future. This has been entertaining. Um,
on
I had a good time,
Fridays,
so
on Fridays, the only reason I stepped aside to have the conversation with you is because you You strike me as someone not just seeking truth, but at some point you believed you had it and lost it.
Yeah, because it's not real.
And it's not so much. Here's what I'm getting. I may be way off base. You can tell me. Um, it's not so much the bit of losing it for losing it. It's the point. It's the bit where you lost it because nobody could prove it for you.
I, 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 I think I have a better analogy. I like
Okay.
it sounds smoother. It's like, say I found $1,000 bill,
Hmm.
but then I discovered that I didn't have a real $1,000 bill. I had a fake $1,000 bill. All those feelings I had when I had the $1,000 bill were because of me. It had nothing to do with the $1,000.
Got it.
But I'm still in search of a
Hmm.
$1,000 bill now. I
Got it.
had it. I didn't lose it, so I'm still looking for it.
Got it. That makes sense.
I've dealt with a lot of people, Christians in particular, who will claim that my apostate status means that I was never actually a Christian. Which is simply calling me a liar with at no evidence. Um, and then or they claim that I'm backslidden, which means that, oh, I'm still a Christian, I'm still saved, I'm just rebelling against God because that's what cool kids do,
So
which is also simply untrue.
here's a interesting side note. So I had a event happen at the age of 17, and I had an event happen at 34. It really makes me wonder what's going to happen in another 17 years. But I had at the age of 17, I drowned trying to rescue somebody. Now, at the age of 14, I'd given my life to Jesus. Don't know. I didn't know the extent of how much he was going to hang on to me. But 3 years later, I drown and I go to heaven. And I asked him a question. I asked him a number of questions, but the one question that would apply to you is I asked him, "What do you say about once saved, always saved?" And so he said, "I'm going to ask you three questions, and based on the answers that you give me, you're going to find out whether or not you get into heaven." So, Jay, I'm going to ask you the same three questions he asked me. Um, there's a cat that might jump up on my lap.
No worries.
If a person is born into your family, are they family?
If they were born from a blood relative, yes,
Okay. If a person is not born blood relative and you adopt them, are they family?
absolutely.
Okay. If a person is born into your family, but they do everything they can to run your name through the mud, they treat you like crap, they talk so much evil about your name, are they still family?
I mean, it depends on the day at that point, but yes.
I said to the first one, still family. Second one, yeah, because of the Gentile grafted into the Jew. And I said, oh, the third one, they're still family. Come on. They're still family, but I'm not going to give them all the, like, rewards or the full will inheritance
So
as they.
you believe in, I think it's universalism, like everybody's going to be somewhat saved. No one's actually going to go to hell.
No, I do hold the position that there are people going to go to heaven or hell.
Okay. I mean,
Um,
I find that I could take issue with that, but again, you've been pretty reasonable, so we'll go with it.
I said, I would receive them as family, but actually giving them all of the reward. No, they wouldn't get all the reward. They'd still be counted as family, but I wouldn't give them all of the will, all of the inheritance, because of how much they spoke
See,
against me. And to my shock, This is my body is dead, my soul and spirit in heaven. My soul and spirit hear the shocking news that that's how God does family.
Well, and see, like, I don't want to make fun of you in particular. So if it sounds like I am, I assure you that's not my intent.
Okay?
But like, I have no problem listening to you tell me about your religious
Hmm.
experiences. Um, like as a person who enjoys literature, like even if I think it's untrue, I can enjoy the prose. I can enjoy the way you phrase things. I can think that your your beliefs can have like I don't want to use a gay word like beauty, but like a certain enjoyable thing to them.
Yeah.
Um, but I still don't find it truthful. Um, and I think, like I said, again, a lot of Christians seem to have a problem with that because they would insist that no, you're just lying. You truly believe you're just in denial.
Right.
Um,
Do you know who the Amish are?
Vaguely.
So, when my maternal my paternal grandma passed, I went to an Amish funeral, and all the ways that people not Amish do funerals, oh my goodness. The the Amish have us beat on on all the things that are done with a ceremony. Their ceremonies go 3 days. You have 2 days of visiting with the family, and then the viewing is the third day, and the viewing is just shortly before they put them into the ground. But there is one particular guy that I I, I shared this story of the three questions, and to the first question of being born blood, he said yes, they're family.
Mhm.
To being adopted, he says no, they're not family. And I said, if they, and to the third one of born into your family but treat you like dirt and run your name through the mud, he said they're not family. And then he asked me, do you think I'm going to go into heaven? And I said, absolutely not. And he was shocked that a person who's not Amish, would tell a guy who's been Amish all of his life, that's been teaching the Amish way for all of his life, or all of his adult life, that he's not going to go to heaven. He is shocked that I would tell him that. And he says,
Yeah,
how?
because he has his own reasons to believe his particular religious beliefs.
And I said,
Like I,
he's like, how dare you? I said, no, how dare you? I asked you three questions. Twice you said no. So if God is just and fair, he's going to do to you as you did to him.
I mean, I take issue with describing the biblical God as just or fair.
So come to find out that this was the same guy who had been telling my parents when they left the Amish when I was 2 years old. He'd been telling them for 29 years that because they left the Amish church, they were going to hell. And then 29 years later, their son comes to tell him he's not going to heaven because he said no to God. And I
I
think
mean,
that's
it's an
that's the
inspiring
difference.
tale.
That's the difference between most Christians you'll encounter and me.
Well, and generally, the honest and appropriate way to approach it is giving each person the individual attention they need. Because, like, as much as everybody loves to claim that Christians are a monolith religion, first off, like you have different sects: Anglican, Catholic, Baptist, etc. But even I found deeper than that, people have their own personal take on their religion. Doesn't have any scriptural backing, or they pick the scripture that they like the most, and the rest don't apply for just reasons. They'll make something up. Whatever helps them smooth over that cognitive dissonance of whatever it is they got going on in their head. Um, because I find that there are perfectly naturalistic explanations for all of these feelings. It doesn't diminish them for that individual person, but it certainly doesn't mean that things outside of reality are actually happening. Like, I every religion that I've talked to will claim that other Christian sects are just believing things the wrong way. The evidence is the scripture that they like, which is the exact same argument their counterpart will make. The honest thing is to deal with each person the way that they are. I don't know what they believe yet. I can assume basic Christian things, but that doesn't always hold because Christians have wildly varying beliefs about God, salvation, what is and isn't a sin, who can and cannot judge, like all of this. Like the opinions run all sides of the spectrum. But sadly, I simply don't have the time to give everybody that kind of attention. So there's a lot of generalizations that happen on my end. And Christians certainly do the same thing. Um, and I mean, you can be rather glad because most of the people I talk to on threads, I am not this polite to. I've had a lot
I
of
don't think
conversations.
I don't think any of them actually give you the time of day to respect who you are
Some
as a person.
well, some don't. I mean, and that's the thing. Like a naturalist point of view, like some people are assholes. Like it's just people. It doesn't mean Satan's involved. It doesn't mean there's a supernatural why they're good or I'm misunderstanding something. They're just people like I am with their own particular beliefs about the world they live in. Um, and I'm sure in the future, when science has progressed further than we are now, if people of that time knew the things I believed, they would clearly laugh because those are so completely incorrect and obviously incorrect. But at the time, currently, that's the best evidence that I have, and the reasons I have to trust the things about that we know about stars and the universe and our history. Like we, I find it to be the more honest position. I don't claim to know everything. I don't think any honest scientist would claim to know everything. But the things that we do know at this point, we know with a large amount of certainty, and none of it lends any credence to any religious claim. I just speak most strongly of Christianity because, again, I spent 20 years of my life living it. Um,
What denomination, if you don't mind my asking?
as far as I know, Baptist. I grew up in Georgia. I went to a Baptist church. I couldn't tell you the name of the sign in particular, but everybody told me I was a Baptist. So I could tell you my specific beliefs, and which might be a better indicator, but I don't think any Baptists think anything crazy unless you're a Catholic, in which case we're absolute heretics. So, but generally, the I'm pretty sure that the church I went to is far more fundamentalist because they're the kind that it's literally true, every word of it. There's no allegory, there's no
Yikes.
metaphor. It is all historically true,
Yikes.
um, which isn't. And this claim isn't necessarily a biblical claim, but a lot of people attribute it anyways. The alleged age of the Earth being 6,000 years, um, which again, it just goes to show there are Christians who will say that the Bible does not state that at all, and then there are Christians who were like, well, we'll add up all these generational names, and we assume they lived 900 years, and that gives us this age. So yes, it says the age of the Earth. Like both camps could be correct, but there's zero way to tell because we don't have the original author to ask, what did you actually mean, my dude? Which God could do. And a lot of Christians try to make the case that somehow that violates free will, which I don't find to be the case because biblical God does not care about free will. He will harden your heart as necessary to make his plans happen. But also, it doesn't violate free will because allegedly even the Satan and the devils know of God and they still don't believe in him. Or it's not that they don't believe in him, but like they're like, you're the God, but we could do what we want anyways because we're better. So clearly he could talk to us and it wouldn't influence our decision one way or the other. So it doesn't violate free will. So we're forced to operate off the idea that he could do that, but he must have reasons not to, which I find to be, given the character of biblical God as written, doesn't really make much sense. I would not never talk to my child as much as I love my children. Nothing could convince me to not do that. Like, and if I'm capable, if I, a flawed, sinful human being who's corrupted and could never be good, if I can feel that strongly about the alleged analogy, a father and his children. I can't imagine a God who has all power and all ability would honestly make that decision. If he's not making that decision, then something about his character is wrong. Something about his abilities are wrong. Something about his perfect knowledge is wrong. And I find that to be just it doesn't even leave the gate like that doesn't fit with what I know about reality. What I've
Okay.
experienced in the world and the analogies given, and that's just on top of like all the scientific issues and actual physical evidence. But just dealing with God Himself, like I find there to be moral problems with His alleged character.
Fair points. Um,
And I'm not even. And one last thing, and then I will be quiet for a while again. Swear to God,
no, actually,
I would even.
I was gonna say go ahead with your last bit. My usual runtime is 7 to um, 7 to 9, but I started late, and my timer is ticking down. I have like 10 minutes, so
All right, I'll be quick. So I gotta remember what I was going to say now. God, I was baked. Um, Not even to say that I don't even think that it's not that there's no God. There could be a God. I cannot like I don't call myself agnostic or anything, but I supposedly it fits. But like but it's certainly not the biblical God.
okay.
And I would also probably safely make that claim about any human-made religion. But I can't say that with any definitiveness because I don't. It's not my thing. I have better things to do with my time.
Okay. Um, if I were to send you a video, would you watch it?
I will give it an honest watch.
It's like 45 minutes.
That
It's
sounds painful, but I'm a masochist. We'll do it.
it's science.
I
It's
said I'm a masochist. I'll do it.
it's science and it's the stars. So I think you'd like it. Um,
If it's from Ken Ham, I'm going to complain when I come back.
no,
All
I
right.
I dislike that guy too. Um, um, what was I gonna say? Oh, in the middle of you, in the middle of you talking about all the reasons why you're not accepting God,
Great.
this cat absolutely stomped on my balls. I was like, I don't know whether you saw my screen. I was like, ah! So it was not about anything you. Anyways, usually Fridays is my when I do my open topic. So whatever a person wants to talk about. The only way or only reason why I went into conversation with you is because we'd already been going at it for. So I figured uh, actual face to face or voice to voice would be a whole lot easier because there's so much lost in
Yeah,
text to text.
agreed. I agree. But like I said, I greatly enjoyed the conversation. I appreciate making an exception for me. I'm
Absolutely.
certainly happy to watch a video if you send me the link on Threads, and then I will try and keep in touch because I mean, maybe we'll think of something entertaining to talk about. I don't
Okay.
mind.
All right. Thank you, Jay.
Yep. Take care, bud.
You too. Well, that was highly unexpected, and I'm glad I went for it. And Jay, I apologize. I certainly did not want to present that I was preaching at you. That's definitely not the way I want to do it. So I can see it's counting down. I got like 8 minutes left. I went through my YouTube as of yesterday to check. I haven't yet put all the videos into VLC to check. That's the next thing I'm going to check. But all the videos up until Sunday. Sorry, not Sunday. Friday. All of the videos since Friday. I have uploaded 663 gigabytes of videos. So hopefully by Thursday, because takes a long time to unpack the gigabytes of data. Um, Hopefully by Thursday, I will have a number of how many days, minutes, hours, or days, hours, minutes um, of content that I put on YouTube. I'm just kind of curious. I know the overnight live streams are going to be the longest sections, but yeah. All right, everybody. I thank you for stopping by. Jay, especially. You're always welcome. Everybody else, it's been good. We'll do it again tomorrow night.